life is not just joy. And don't get me wrong, I love joy. I love excitement. I love finding the best in things. And I've experienced deep grief. I've experienced deep heartbreak and pain. And I don't want to be someone who resists that.
How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate you asking me. I'm so excited.
Amazing. Well, I'm Adam, and this is about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about your new album as well.
Great.
Awesome. So, first off, Mereki, where were you born and raised?
So I was born in Australia. I was actually born in Byron Bay, which is a coastal town, but I grew up in Noosa.
Okay, how close? What's the
They're
major
like,
city that's close to? Like Sydney? I don't know. I'm so bad with geography.
no, yeah, Brisbane is
Okay.
the closest city to where I grew up in Noosa. Basically, it's about 2 hours north. But I grew up in a tiny little coastal town. A very beautiful, a very, very, very magical, beautiful little coastal town, but small nonetheless.
That's awesome. Did you grow up like surfing or anything involving the ocean?
So, well, I was born underwater actually, in
Wait,
a
what?
in
Really?
in a birthing pool that my dad built with his bare hands in our backyard.
Oh, wow.
That kind of family.
Was it like a midwife or like how?
Yeah, there was a midwife,
Okay,
and
like,
there was a doctor
just
and a
like, all
midwife.
right, here we go.
Let's go for this. See what happens. So there was a beautiful midwife named Pam Sonia, who my family's still close with, and a doctor who were present. But yeah, one of the first water births in Australia, I believe.
No way. That's wild. Okay, the first ones. So were these to be one of the first? Like they were just like, okay, we're gonna try this out. Like,
well, so I get it, in other countries, I guess that it had been happening, but there weren't that many opportunities to do that. You know, nowadays you can go into a hospital or like a center and give birth. A lot of people are encouraged to give birth in baths or whatever.
right,
But back
right.
then, sort of like your options were like hospital, or, yeah,
Or at home. Same
yeah.
vibe. Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. You could say you were one of the first ones to
Yeah,
be born that way.
I'm actually in a book too, and
No way.
yeah, a home birthing book, and I was supposed to be on the cover actually, my first cover, but you could see my mum's breast. So in the 80s, that was that wasn't allowed. But now now it's like it's come up again, and it's on the internet, and now I am on
The cover.
Yeah, free the nipple.
I was gonna say, did they do like they republished it or something?
Yeah,
A revised version with you on the cover. That's awesome. Wow. Okay.
It's this really beautiful picture of like my mom and my dad both sort of holding me and looking at me just after I've been born. So
wow, that's so incredible. Do you have any siblings?
yeah, I have 2 older sisters.
Oh, so they just went with the water birth for you.
Yeah, both of my sisters were home births as well.
Okay.
But I was the only water birth.
Interesting. Well, do you come from a musical household?
So, yes and no. My dad was always strumming on the guitar growing up, and we were always listening to music in the house. My mom's mom was a singer, but directly, yeah, directly no. My mom was very, very supportive of my voice from a young age. I was singing since I was a baby, apparently. So
Oh, wow. Okay. Do any of your siblings do music?
no.
Just you. Okay. And with the guitar at the house, was that the first instrument you learned, or were you in piano lessons, anything like that?
Yeah, guitar was definitely the first instrument I sort of started hacking away on, but I really focused mostly on the voice. I had vocal lessons from sort of a like classically trained teacher quite early on, which I loved, and actually I think it's sort of how I knew to operate my higher register. Was
Sure.
doing some of those more classical tunes with him. And then yeah, I was in like choirs and stuff, but my mom always wrote as well. And so I think from her I learned, I write every morning. And so I sort of watched her write, and I've continued on doing that.
Does she just write for fun, or
Yeah, she just
like
writes. I think sort of like for catharsis, I think.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you've ever done the book The Artist's Way.
I've read it, but I haven't done. I know what you're talking about.
Oh,
where
that's
they say,
cool.
yeah, you get up and you do,
your morning
do that
pages.
to kind of, to get your brain kind of going.
Yeah. So even before I'd read that book, unbeknownst to me, my mom had read it, and that's sort of where when she started doing her morning pages. But I actually recently reread it and did all of the tasks and stuff.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan, and I just love that idea of waking up in the morning and going like, okay, I'm just gonna like blurt out all of the thoughts that are simmering on the top of my mind so that I can clear space for my creativity or my divinity to sort of come through. Because for me, I think for anyone whose brain sort of moves quite fast, and with all of the stimulus we're getting all the time, it's just, for me, it's such a nice way to be able to like get it out of my mind and onto the page. It's like, I was actually speaking to this adorable girl in a coffee shop the other day, and I'd taken my journal in, and she was like, oh my God, I love journaling. I was like, same. and we sat there and we discussed like, what do other people do with all of the thoughts in their brains the whole time? Like, do they honestly just like keep them there the entire time? Because that would stress me out.
Yeah, just suppress them, I guess. Yeah, because you just get up and start writing whatever the hell you're thinking, right? You're just like, okay, blah, 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 I feel like this, or you just jot down anything and everything in your mind.
Yeah. And then for me anyways, it's like my mind feels a lot clearer. And I also, if there's been any like emotional turmoil or like anxieties that might have snuck in that I hadn't really acknowledged, but were sort of just, living beneath the surface, it's like, oh, that's why, I don't know, I'm a bit pissed off today, or that's why, a bit agitated. And you can sort of like address them and they go, okay, cool, and move on.
Yeah, it's like you're self-reflective.
Yeah, as opposed to them just like niggling away. I don't know. What do you write? What do you?
Well, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the things that you're supposed to do is kind of do like a daily reprieve at the end of the day. Like, okay, here's the stuff I did that was good. I opened the door for this person at the restaurant, or you just kind of like recap your day, right? And then you write all the things down that your bad thoughts, as far as like, oh yeah, this person cut me off, and I was like, that guy, or whatever. You kind of just write down these thoughts that kind of come through your mind. And I started doing it in the morning, which is helpful. Like recap instead of at the end of the night, like doing it in the morning time. Like, okay, yesterday I did this, and it's just like, it's really interesting how you can kind of start your day off like, okay, I'm acknowledging all those things yesterday, but now it's like a fresh day.
Yes, totally. I love the 12-step programs for that sort of self-analysis and for the tools that they give.
Oh yeah, it's not even about the drinking or using after like 2 months, right? You're like, that obsession is kind of been lifted, and then it's just like, who am I as a person? Like, it's really interesting.
I completely agree. I feel like it's almost like a secret like gang of people who like have all of these tools to deal with life that just aren't readily available in other like people don't have access to that kind of stuff.
And it's free. It's crazy.
And it's free. That's what, honestly, that's what I always say. I'm like, it's literally free therapy. It's like, it's literally free self-betterment. Everyone's paying like all this money to do all of this self-care stuff. And it's like, that's important too. But a lot of people also use money as an excuse, I think, to not work on themselves. And it's like, well,
yeah, it's very fascinating. I mean, I mean, when I went into it, I just had this like I had this idea of what it would be, and from TV or whatever, and then it's like, well, that was not at all what I was expecting. And it's wild. It's amazing how much those steps really can benefit people, even if you just did them and you had no like addiction or alcohol problem, you're just like, okay, I'm powerless over whatever it may be, something that's bothering you in your life, and you went through and did like, your resentments and all these things, and it's like, wow, you could really focus on your own character defects you maybe never would have even addressed if you weren't kind of doing that work.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we're all addicted to something, like whether it be my experience in within the 12 steps was CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous.
Oh, sure.
And so like that's what I mean. You don't need a particular vice to engage in the 12-step programs, like a tangible, you know what I mean? Like we all have addictions to control and to, I mean, a million different things.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's really fascinating. And I loved it. For me, I was like, oh my gosh, here's a safe space where everyone wants to sort of discuss this, and where people are being so much more honest and vulnerable than people generally are in society. And that's so helpful,
Oh yeah, because when you can feel somebody else has gone through something, well, you go in there thinking like, oh, I'm never going to tell anyone about that, and then you hear somebody's story that was even more intense. You're like, well, damn, if that person's willing to share that, then what am I doing?
Brave. But I also found a bit of that in doing The Artist's Way, doing
it's very similar.
Cameron's task there. It has and I just started reading also, or I'm about midway through, the Rick Rubin creativity book.
Oh, I haven't read. I've heard of it, and I actually recently heard of him on a podcast, which is very fascinating. Just the amount of records he's produced over the course of the decades.
It's funny. It's not a workbook at all, but the comments and the suggestions he makes about creativity in that book are very aligned with The Artist's Way, I would say.
I'll have to check it out, and I want to re-listen to The Artist's Way. I have it on Audible because I'm lazy. But re-listening to it, yeah, that's I mean, it is fascinating. I mean, I'm not a musician or in that regard, but being creative is something I've always kind of been drawn to, and just helps me even with conversations like this, like just knowing, certain things that I wouldn't never like looked at outside.
I believe that we are all creative. I think that just some of us have different access points to it.
Sure. No, 100%. Wow. Well, back to you and your music. I mean, that was awesome and fascinating conversation. But sometimes these conversations just go away, and I'm like, oh wow, that was awesome. But so you started off, singing. You said you at a very early age, since you're a baby, you were singing, and your mom was the one that noticed that and kind of catered you and kind of put you in these voice lessons.
I would say so. Yes. I was in sort of first like a group sort of singing lessons, which I didn't really like because I didn't play well with others.
It's kind of interesting. You're like, okay, I'm going to sing with 12 other people, and how am I going to get, one-on-one?
I was actually quite shy as a child, so it was like, I don't know. I preferred the private lessons that I went into afterwards, and then I joined a band when I was in university.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, I was shy, so it actually took me a little later to really engage with my voice and my writing.
So when you joined the band, were you the singer and songwriter?
So I wasn't. I was just the singer to start with. The co-singer to start with. My friends had a band, and they'd spent Christmas with me, I think, and I feel like it was then that they sort of realized that I could sing, and invited me to join. And so that was really my first experience of being on stage and recording my voice and all of that. I think the very first show I ever played, I like literally tripped onto the stage. It was hilarious. And then from then, it wasn't actually really until I moved to the States that I started properly songwriting. I met just a group of songwriters and producers in East LA, and very sort of haphazardly started recording demos for them. They were all writing pop songs.
Oh, and you were the voice on the demo.
And I was the voice, exactly, to pitch to bigger artists. And from that, it sort of very naturally just moved into me writing my own stuff, and one of those songs quite quickly really getting picked up and cut by Kylie Minogue.
Wow.
Which was super exciting as an Australian in LA, obviously. And then I did sort of the pop writing sort of boot camp style stuff for a while before re-entering sort of my own artistry, and that was the journey towards this record.
Interesting. Yeah, because once you kind of, if you write a song, then obviously a big artist cuts it. It's like, okay, this is where I'm shining, right? It would be hard to stir away and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna write these songs for myself and kind of pursue that, but this is lucrative and working, and I'm getting in these writing rooms, but I'm pitching other artists.
It was such an interesting journey for me, because I was so naive. I showed up in LA and was like, what do you mean? Like, Beyonce doesn't write her own songs? What do you mean? Like, I was so clueless.
Well, I think a lot of people are. They're just like assume like, okay, so and so writes all their own songs, but it even comes down to some of the biggest artists, and Beyonce obviously, but like Justin Bieber has Pooh Bear, who writes almost all of the songs for him, or he probably writes the majority, and then he kind of comes in and tinkers it and changes it to how he would love it to sound for him. But
it's fascinating, and it was just this whole world that I was really new to. And even when they said, oh, Kylie wants to cut your song, I remember being like, but that's my song. Like, I had like a moment, and I was like, okay, don't be ridiculous. Kylie Minogue wants to cut your song. I grew up, I remember literally when I was a kid, my mom and both of my sisters went to the Kylie Minogue concert, and they didn't take me because I was too young, and I like cried my eyes out. Like, I was so upset that they didn't take me. And so I was like, yeah, sure.
Well, I wrote a song for her. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, what took you to LA? How did you get from Australia then to Los Angeles?
Oh, great question. I actually meant to move to New York, and I
West Coast.
and I did, but like, I don't know, somehow ended up in LA for a few months before I was moving to New York. And that's when I met this whole group of producers and songwriters who have since who are sort of at the beginning of their careers then, but who have since gone on to, Dan did the Olivia Rodrigo record, and Ariel's Haim, and like they all
Ariel's done so many records.
Vampire Weekend.
He did Henry Hall, who's he's the son of Louis, what the hell's her name? She's Elaine in Seinfeld.
Dreyfus.
Dreyfus, yeah. Dreyfus, yeah. And then he also did the new We Are Scientists record too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was just this crew that I like happened to meet out or something, like when I first moved to LA. And Ariel ended up I know, crazy. Ariel ended up signing me to his publishing company, Heavy Duty.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was living with Dan and a couple of other producers and writers. And anyways, it was a great, it was a really fun time in LA. Like, those years were super fun. I don't feel like it was as saturated with pop songwriters maybe as it is now. Like, it felt like while I was there I think I was there for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
It really sort of like, it went from being like, oh, this is like a sort of side thing. These people, Jesse Shatkin, who did a bunch of stuff with he did Chandelier with Sia and all of that. Like, they all have their little home studios, and we would work in, each other's garages or whatever. And then that sort of, it became, I feel like the pop songwriting thing in LA became very omnipresent.
Oh, massive. Yeah.
It was massive. And that's when I kind of dipped out. I love working. I love collaborating with other people. I love writing songs with other people. I would do that, every day. And I love to do that, but it did become quite like political. It was like, well, if you haven't written a hit, then you don't get in the
Yeah.
room with the
Then it
person
looks, they have to look at the resume and
and all
exactly.
that. So I kind of burned out on that. And uh, in the same breath, my father passed away in 2014, which was
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
massive, like, emotional upheaval for me. He was my best friend. We were like, we looked the same. We were the same. It was such a huge loss for me. And I really do think that realigned me a bit with my personal purpose and wanting to be an artist,
Mhm.
as opposed to just a writer.
Writer. Yeah. Where are you now? Are you in Australia?
So no, I during the pandemic I actually moved to the UK. So I
Oh,
live
wow.
yeah, so I spend half my time out in the countryside and half in London.
Interesting. Okay. So once, so your father passed away in 2014, and that's when you started to really pursue your artist career?
I'd say so. I'd released a couple of singles that had done okay, and then I had toured as the vocalist for an electronic uh, uh, producer named Goldroom, and I'd featured on a couple of his singles, and we'd sort of toured we'd toured a lot of America, and we'd done
Mhm.
Colombia, and that had been great. That had been a great experience too, sort of like getting my sea legs in terms of performing live.
Sure. Especially, I'm sure
Um,
big audiences.
yeah, big festivals and all of that. And I did that again actually more recently, just before the pandemic, for Flight Facilities, which are an Australian sort of dance duo,
Wow.
um, which is great. It's so much fun. But it's very different from standing on a stage, and singing your songs, your heart out,
Yeah, and
right?
your songs are a lot more, like, somber and slower than, like, an EDM song, I feel like.
No, it's funny. It's, you know what? It's something that I actually really struggle with, because I love to jump around on stage. Like, I love for a live performance to be fun and engaging and energetic. So it actually was something that I thought about when I was writing these songs. Like you say, they're more vulnerable.
Mhm.
They're a little slower, but I'm actually just putting together my live set. And I had a dear friend the other day sort of say to me, he's like, just because your songs are slower on the record doesn't mean they have to be live. And I was
Oh.
like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, so watch this space.
So you sped them up quite a bit.
Well, we'll see. I'm actually like having a call after this with my guitarist and Jerry, who produced a lot of the record, Jerry Bernhardt, with Tony Buchan, to sort of chat about how we're going to do that.
Amazing. So when did you start writing this record? I think I saw that it's been a few years in the making, right?
Well, I feel like one of the first songs that I wrote for the record was "Phone Call," which was written
Mhm.
in 2014 with Dan Nigro. Uh, I wrote that about my father just after he'd passed
Oh,
away.
okay.
Yeah, and then "Wasted Love" is also an older one that I wrote back in my sort of more LA pop-y days, I would say.
Mhm.
And then the rest sort of were a work in progress. A few of them, like "The Garden" and "Presence."
Presence is, I think, one of my
Is
favorite
it?
song on the record. Yeah, that
Oh, good.
one. I'm bad with track list or number or names. Oh, Wasted Love's a one I really like too.
Oh, good. Yeah, I love "Wasted Love." Uh, "Presence" I wrote like in like 2021, I guess. So one of the
Okay.
last tracks of the record. And same with "The Garden." "Wasted Love" is an oldie, which I've just always loved.
Great song, yeah.
It's been that song. I produced that song honestly probably like 30 times over before
Oh,
I
wow.
I could just never get it right. Like, I've always loved the song, the melodies and the lyrics and everything. Like, that song has always been great,
Mhm.
but it was a painstaking process to perfect it. And bless Jerry Bernhardt, who in the end helped me get over the line with that
I'll
one. And
say you did this job. The job you did on it is fantastic.
I'm super happy with how it turned out.
So were you writing this, I guess you said you moved to the UK during the pandemic. Were you in LA and during that time you got up and moved?
So I was actually in Australia. I happened to be in Australia for my birthday,
Oh, oh,
March
bummer.
March 2020. Well, actually, what
Your
was my
birthday is on March 20th?
23rd?
Oh, okay. My
It's
older son's birthday is March 20th.
Oh, so is he a little Aries?
He is.
He is. Oh, lucky you.
And my other one's is April 23rd. So in next Saturday, or
Oh,
next week.
soon,
Yeah, yeah.
soon.
2 in a
Oh,
row. It's fun.
cute. How old are they?
One just turned 15, the other one's turning 7.
Oh, I love it. I love the teens.
Oh
They
yeah, they've
like,
been fun.
oh, they're so fun. So
Oh yeah.
fun. They're so like self-assured.
Oh
Na-
sure. So yeah,
Nowadays, like
so
teens,
nice,
oh,
never talk
like,
back. It's great.
it's really funny. I feel like a kinship with teenagers of the now. I'm always like, I swear I should have been born in this.
Era.
Oh my God, I just love them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I've lost the
No,
question.
so you said you were in Australia for your birthday
Oh yeah,
in
for my birthday,
March.
and then so ended up getting stuck there
Mhm.
for a few months for 2020. But I mean, it was paradise. We were by the beach, and it was. I feel like, I don't know about you, but everything pre 2020 had like sped up a lot.
Mhm.
Everything had felt really fast and on top of each other, and sort of not having that time and space to really breathe into myself. And yeah, so that first part of the pandemic was actually for me a real sort of release and relief. And then, I mean, then I went back to the States and got back for a pretty tumultuous time, and uh, came to the UK, and then sort of just never left. So I've been
Were
here ever.
you writing the record during this time?
Yeah, not that first time. I was writing. I'm always writing. I'm just one of those people. I have like 9,000 voice memos in my phone, and like books and books and books just full of like scribbly lyrics. But no, I think a lot of the record was done, and then it was just those last few songs that hadn't been written, but I was in process of producing it at that time. So I started producing remotely with Tony
Mhm.
and Jerry during that time, and just getting stuff finished.
Sure. Yeah, because I didn't know if you were. I've talked to other artists that either had a lot of creativity during that time period or absolutely none, because it's like there wasn't a whole lot of or life experiences happening, so to speak, aside
Mm,
from what you could see in the
oh,
media.
I don't know. I think I might. I feel like for me, it was a lot of life experience happening, though. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I went on like uh, what is it, the dark night of the soul or whatever. I just feel like it was such a time of self-reflection, and I feel like I can only speak for me personally, but it was a real time to call on any sort of tools that I had uh, found to deal with difficult,
Mhm.
emotions and situations in the past, and really hold on to them or put them into practice, and that's sort of where the song present that's where the song presence came out of. I was having so the first part of the pandemic was great for me. The second part was tough. I was in a new country. It was my first English winter. There were no, nothing was open. I wasn't, I was living like with family and all that sort of stuff that a lot of people went through. But I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, and his book A New Earth is one of my favorites. And I started rereading that, and he's like the king of presence. And I just I when I could get my brain out of being in the past, or that that I missed or that I didn't have anymore, or the future that was so uncertain, and I could just be in this very moment, everything was fine, you know. And it was really only when my mind took me elsewhere that shit sucked.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so I really wanted to, and also I love to be able to get like a positive messaging into a pop song without it sounding cheesy.
Mhm.
Like, and that was a real goal for this song too. And the other thing that I really love about the way Presence turned out is that it's like this mantra, right? Presence, presence. It's a mantra for me. And then at the end, and it's fun and it's upbeat. It's like, that's
Mhm.
right. It doesn't have to all be like, you know, I grew up with alternative parents who, you know, sometimes listen to alternative music that really wasn't good. And you know,
What do you mean as far as that? I'm
well, like, you know,
curious.
like new agey, you know, I don't know, anything that like anything that would promote something like presence in a song wasn't
Got it.
sonically like cool, right?
Okay, sure.
Right. So, anyways, there's that. But then, you know, at the end of the song, I have the breakdown where I'm like screaming.
Mhm.
You are Nirvana, just like the wave is the water. And then I fucking scream it, you know. I'm like, you are Nirvana, just like the wave is. And when I was recording that, I was literally on the floor in the studio screaming. Like, I thought that I like broke my voice box at one point. I was like, but that it was so important for me to get that energy into it, because I think with a lot of positive messaging, there's this whole like, and it's all good. And it's like, no, like doing the work and putting into practice these really challenging concepts like presence is fucking hard. Like,
Mhm.
and it's brutal. And it's like, you know, life is pain. What is the Princess Bride quote? Life is pain. Anyone trying to tell you otherwise is trying to sell you something.
Oh,
Um,
that's a good one. I don't
it
remember, but
was
yeah,
just,
it's been a minute since I've seen that one.
oh, such a one of my faves, classics.
A lot of people love that film. I think it's like the
Oh,
best thing ever.
the greatest, so well written. But it's like, yeah, life is not just joy. And don't get me wrong, I love joy. I love excitement. I love finding the best in things. And I've experienced deep grief. I've experienced deep heartbreak and pain. And I don't want to be someone who resists that. I want to be someone who can be okay with the full spectrum of human existence.
Mhm. And I think you do a great job of portraying that on the album. I mean, it's a really vulnerable album.
Thank you.
And was that something that were you ever at all concerned about people hearing your stories in that way or no?
It's really funny. I weirdly wasn't. I don't know whether that was just because the last few years have been, you know, so tough for so many people, and including myself, and that it was almost a bit of it like, who
Who gives a shit at this point?
who cares? Who cares? Like,
Yeah.
it's so much more important to be honest and be myself. And I have to say that, you know, I worked really hard for a really long time to make this record sound and feel the way that it does. And I'm just so happy that when I hear it, or when indeed I like, you know, press, you know, sent it out into the world, I didn't have there's no remorse. There's no like, oh, I wish I'd done that, or, oh, that's a bit awkward. It's like, no, I feel, because I think I did really, really, you know, it took me a long time to make this record. I think that I'm very fortunate that I just feel really proud.
Well, you should be because it's it's an incredible album.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
wow, yeah, a lot of a lot of people or creatives might think like, you know, when they hear a song, their own song a bunch of times, like, "Ugh, I wish I would have done this differently." But I love the fact that you're like, "No, this is it. Like, I did exactly what I wanted to execute, and it's
Well,
perfect.
like I said, I reproduced Wasted Love like upwards of 30 times. So,
But the 30th version is, yeah, it's there.
but it was
It's
the
awesome.
30th version. It's perfect. And in saying that, I had to do this for the first one. The next record's not going to be so painstaking. The next record, I'm like, you know what? It's going to come out a lot.
Do it and get it out.
Yeah. But that one I had to, for whatever reason, it was like, it was, I had to make it the way it is, and I'm happy.
Well, it's a fantastic album, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so lovely.
I do have one more quick question before I let you go and hop on your call with your guitar player. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I think the best advice that I could give would be to spend time with yourself and on yourself. I think that often we look at our artistry and creativity as something different to our life, and I don't think that they are. I think that true creativity, is our own divinity, and I think the more work you do on yourself, the better your art becomes. So yeah, don't listen to anyone else, just listen to yourself. Bringing it backwards.